What happens when the man who signs your paycheck shows up in a dirty apron and nobody knows who he is? 7 years ago, Silas Jennings bought out a struggling grocery chain with 13 locations across the Midwest. He turned it around, cleaned up the books, modernized distribution, and rebuilt branding. But lately, he'd been hearing quiet complaints. Not formal ones, just whispers from anonymous surveys, a few bad reviews online, and one odd letter from a customer who said, "Your staff's great, but your management's asleep at the wheel." Silas didn't want to rely on second-hand info. He was done reading filtered reports. He wanted to see it for himself, so he picked Store 7, a busy location on the edge of town where turnover was high and morale seemed low. He'd never set foot there. No one at the store had ever met him, most only knew the name from a corporate newsletter, and that worked in his favor. His disguise was solid: thick glasses, dyed hair, light beard, and a new name, Stan. He had a whole backstory ready too, recently laid off, looking to get back on his feet. The corporate office coordinated with the district manager, telling the store to expect a trainee to shadow employees for a couple of shifts as part of a new hiring program. When Silas stepped into the store that Monday morning, the energy hit him like a wall. The floor manager looked overwhelmed. The staff looked undercaffeinated. The shelves were half-stocked. No one greeted him at the door. A woman in her mid-20s, name tag reading Zaria, looked up from the register and gave him a tired smile. "You the new guy?" "Yeah," Silas said, adjusting his fake name tag. "Stan, all right Stan, you're with me today. We're short again. Surprise, surprise." They were down 3 people. One called in sick, one quit last week, and one was covering the bakery due to another no-show. Zaria explained it all while checking out customers at lightning speed. "You ever run a register?" she asked. "Not in a while." She didn't judge, just handed him a register key and showed him the ropes. By noon, Silas was sweating. The line wouldn't end. He fumbled with the scanner, hit the wrong button more than once, and apologized about 5 times per customer. Zaria stepped in to help when needed, never once losing her cool. "She's a machine," an old man in line said with a grin. "You should give her a raise." Silas smiled, but it hit deep. He watched as Zaria skipped her break to clear the line, helped an elderly woman who dropped her groceries, then turned around to fix a pricing error without a word of complaint. Just past 2, the assistant supervisor showed up. "Name tag, Kurt. Why's your drawer short?" Kurt asked her, already annoyed. Zaria blinked. "What?" Silas turned his head. He'd just finished counting a register with her. It was balanced. Kurt held up a sheet. "Says here you're missing $20 from the morning count." "No, I double-checked that." It was Kurt cut her off, voice louder now. "I did the drop myself. It's short. Again." Silas watched Zaria freeze. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but she just stared at the paper. "I'll fix it," she muttered. "You'll fix it," Kurt repeated. "That's not how this works. You're on thin ice, Zaria. Last time was a warning." Silas stepped forward, heart pounding. "Hey, I was with her this whole time. Her drawer was right." Kurt didn't even look at him. "You're new. You don't know how we do things here." Silas clenched his jaw. He didn't want to blow his cover, not yet, but something was off. He'd counted that drawer himself. It wasn't short. Zaria looked like she wanted to disappear. She turned back to her register, silent. Kurt walked off, flipping through his papers like the matter was closed. That night, Silas stayed after hours, pretending to help with inventory. He asked one of the night crew, a quiet guy named Theo, if drawer shortages were a common thing. Theo hesitated. "Only when Kurt does the drop." Silas narrowed his eyes. "You telling me he's—" Theo shook his head fast. "I'm not saying anything, just, she's not the first one he's blamed." Silas didn't sleep that night. He wasn't just looking at a management issue. He was looking at a trust problem. And if the guy running the floor was shifting blame to cover his own mistakes, or worse, then it was time to pay real close attention and maybe stop pretending. Tuesday started before sunrise. Silas arrived 40 minutes early, wearing the same cheap work shoes that were already cutting into his heel. The back room smelled like old mop water, and the only sound came from the buzz of the fridge compressors. He found Zaria hunched over the schedule board, arms crossed. "You're early," she said, not looking up. "Figured I'd beat the rush," he replied, pulling on an apron. "The rush doesn't wait for anyone." Silas didn't respond. She looked drained, eyes dull, voice flat. Yesterday's fire had dulled into something quieter. He'd seen it before. A good employee trying to hold it together while being slowly worn down. The first few hours passed under fluorescent lights and quiet tension. They stocked dairy and rotated fresh produce. No small talk, no music, just the beep of scanners and the clatter of crates. Around 7, a woman named Tasha clocked in, rubbing her temples. "You good?" Zaria asked. "Didn't sleep," Tasha muttered. "Kid sick. I'm covering bakery again. No one else showed." Zaria gave a slow nod. "Figures." Silas watched the exchange and noted something. No one seemed surprised. The absences, the stress, the silence, it had all become part of the routine. Mid-morning, a delivery truck pulled in. Silas offered to help unload. The driver, a guy in his 50s with a permanent frown, handed over the clipboard. "You knew?" he asked. "Day 2. Good luck." The storeroom was cluttered. Pallets blocked the walkways, and the inventory log was barely legible. As they wheeled in crates, Silas noticed several boxes labeled for frozen storage sitting at room temperature. He flagged it. "Shouldn't these go in the freezer?" The driver shrugged. "I've been bringing that up for weeks. Doesn't matter. They sit there sometimes all day. Who's in charge of receiving? Kurt, usually, but he never signs off. Just tells me to drop it and go." By late morning, Silas had questions stacking up, but the real shift came at 11. An older woman, probably in her 70s, approached the register with a cart full of items and a shaky hand gripping the handle. Zaria greeted her gently and started scanning. The woman fumbled with her purse and pulled out a loyalty card that wouldn't scan. Zaria manually entered the number, then paused. "Looks like your points expired. I can check with the manager, see if we can apply last month's." The woman nodded gratefully and stepped aside. Zaria left her register to find someone with override access. Silas stayed nearby, organizing the impulse shelf. A minute later, Kurt walked up, already irritated. "No, absolutely not," he said loud enough for customers to hear. "She's way past the deadline. She shops here every week," Zaria replied. "It's $10 off." "Doesn't matter. We're not running a charity. You want to give her a discount out of your own check, be my guest." Zaria looked stunned. "It's a loyalty program." "I'm just following policy." "No," Kurt snapped. "You're bending rules so you can play hero. We don't reward that here." The conversation ended there. Zaria returned to the register, face stiff. The woman, still waiting patiently, didn't ask questions, just paid with shaky hands and walked out slowly, emptying her coin purse to cover the full amount. Silas didn't say a word. He knew the corporate policy. If a regular customer had expired points within 30 days, they were eligible for a one-time courtesy application. That wasn't bending rules. That was the rule. He followed Kurt into the back room after lunch. "Hey," Silas started. "That customer earlier, you don't need to worry about that," Kurt cut in. "Focus on your tasks. You're not here to micromanage." "I just thought maybe." "Look, Stan." Kurt turned to face him. "You're new. I don't expect you to get how things work. Zaria's got a habit of playing savior. It needs to stop." Silas nodded slowly, trying not to let the anger show. "Understood." Kurt walked off, leaving behind the smell of cheap cologne and stale coffee. By 3, the store was short-staffed again. Zaria had taken over for Tasha in bakery so she could eat something, and Silas was left covering 2 registers. The line backed up. A manager from another store would have stepped in, but Kurt had disappeared again. A customer grew impatient. Then another. A man with a cart full of bottled water and canned beans started banging the edge of his cart against the counter. "Anyone else working here?" he barked. Silas apologized, scanning fast as he could. His hands shook. One barcode wouldn't scan, and the man huffed loudly. Zaria returned just in time to calm the customer. and Silas caught her whispering something to him that made him stop complaining. Probably a quiet apology or just her presence. When the rush died down, Silas pulled her aside near the stockroom. "You always handle things like that?" "Like what?" "Putting out fires, covering shifts, taking hits for stuff that's not your fault." She leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Someone has to. You ever think about transferring?" She gave a short laugh without humor. "To where?" "They're all run the same." Silas hesitated. "What about going above Kurt, talking to corporate?" Her eyes rested on his face too long. "Don't take this the wrong way, Stan, but you've been here 2 days. You don't know how fast they shut you down when you talk." He nodded. "Fair." As they walked back, he noticed the freezer door was still propped open with a mop handle. The same boxes from that morning sat untouched. He found Theo in the back, unloading milk. "You know if Kurt ever logs receiving temps?" Theo didn't pause. "Not once." Silas checked the clipboard on the wall, no entries for the past 6 days. He went to the office. Kurt wasn't there, the door was locked, lights off. A sticky note on the desk read, "Back at 5, but 5 came and went, no Kurt." At 6, a worker from a different department, Marcy, approached Zaria with red eyes. "I asked to switch next Friday with Carla. She said yes. Kurt just told me I'm getting written up for shift abandonment." Zaria blinked, confused. "But didn't he approve the swap last week?" He said he never did. "Said there's no record." Silas leaned in. "Was it in writing?" "No, he told me in person, said he'd take care of it." Zaria's jaw tightened. "You're not the first." Marcy looked down. "I can't afford a write-up. One more and I'm out of child care subsidies." Silas stepped away before he said something he couldn't take back. That night, long after close, Silas stayed behind. The doors locked, the lights dimmed. He sat in the break room with a legal pad making a list. Not just a mental one, a real one. Zaria's drawer: incident, loyalty card denial, freezer violations, false schedule, write-up, receiving logs, missing employee absences, never replaced Kurt's disappearances during peak hours, and a separate column. Zaria. Consistently professional Theo. Quiet, observant, reliable Tasha. Exhausted, overextended Marcy. Vulnerable, honest. He circled 2 names. Drew a line under one. Then he closed the pad, looked around the empty break room, and made a decision. Tomorrow he wasn't going to be Stan anymore. Wednesday morning, Silas arrived just after 6. The building lights were still off. Clouds hung low, heavy with a coming storm, and the parking lot had only one other car, a silver sedan with a busted taillight. Zaria's, he assumed. He didn't go in through the employee entrance. Instead, he used his key, the one he'd had since he bought the company. No apron. No fake name. He wore a plain black button-down jeans and a jacket, nothing flashy. But he didn't need flash. He waited by the customer service desk until the locks clicked and the first of the staff shuffled in. One by one, they passed him without recognition. Most were half awake, dragging their feet, eyes on the floor. Then Zaria walked in, hair pulled into a tight bun, coat soaked at the shoulders. She froze when she saw him. "Stan." "No," he said quietly. "My name's Silas Jennings." She stared at him, eyebrows raised. The silence stretched until the store's assistant baker passed by and did a double take. Zaria glanced toward the back office. "You're the owner," she said. "Not a question, just a breathless fact." "I am." Theo entered next, holding a clipboard and coffee, and caught the tail end. His steps slowed. "I need everyone in the break room," Silas said. 5 minutes. Word spread fast. Employees filtered in with cautious glances and tight expressions. Some whispered. Kurt wasn't there yet. Silas stood near the front, arms loose at his sides, letting the weight of his presence settle without saying much. Once the room filled, he looked around. No speech, no preamble. "I've been working here the last 2 days under a different name, watching. Listening." A few people exchanged glances. One man near the back adjusted his baseball cap and muttered something under his breath. "I didn't come here looking to trap anyone. I came because what I was hearing didn't line up with what I believed about this company. Now I see why." Zaria sat forward, hands clenched between her knees. No one else moved. "I've seen food deliveries left out for hours. I've seen employees skip breaks because no one replaced them. I've seen good work dismissed, schedules changed without notice, and rules enforced selectively. He let the words hang. I watched a cashier get blamed for a drawer shortage that didn't exist. I saw a regular customer denied a loyalty discount she was entitled to. I saw one of you get threatened with a write-up for a shift swap that was verbally approved. The room got stiller. I'm not waiting on a report. I'll be reviewing all surveillance footage for the past month. But some things don't require proof beyond what I've already seen. He took a breath. Kurt is not to return to this store, effective immediately. Nobody spoke. A few employees leaned forward, eyes wide. One woman exhaled like she'd been holding her breath since Monday. There's zero tolerance for manipulation, intimidation, or shifting blame. Not here. Not ever. Still no one moved. Then Zaria stood. Mr. Jennings, she said, voice even, what about the customers? The ones who have left because they got tired of being ignored or rushed or talked down to, he turned to her. We'll earn them back, one at a time. But first, we fix the inside. Theo raised his hand, half unsure, then lowered it and just spoke. Are we getting a new manager? Yes, Silas said. But not today. Until then, I'm staying on site. You'll report directly to me. That stirred a few reactions, some disbelief, some cautious hope. And one more thing, Silas added. Before I leave this room, Zaria, stand up. She blinked, then rose slowly. You've held this place together with duct tape and exhaustion. You've covered shifts, trained new hires, and de-escalated situations that never should have happened. You made this store feel human. Zaria's jaw moved slightly, but she said nothing. You're promoted to acting operations lead, effective now, pay adjusted, full override access. You'll help me identify the people and systems worth keeping and the ones that need to go. A few people clapped. Not loud, just enough to break the tension. Zaria didn't react right away. Then she nodded once. After the meeting broke, Silas walked the floor with a clipboard, not as a manager but as an observer. He asked questions, not about numbers, about people. How long had they worked here? What made their job harder? What would they fix first? Tasha mentioned the bakery oven hadn't been cleaned properly in weeks because the filter was cracked and no one approved the replacement. Silas ordered a new one on the spot. Theo brought up how the inventory system still used printed sheets that got misfiled constantly. Silas called IT and scheduled a digital upgrade rollout. By noon, he had 2 pages of action items. Not abstract ideas, fixable problems. Tangible, overdue. At 1:30, Kurt showed up. He walked in like nothing had changed, coffee in hand, Bluetooth in his ear, sunglasses hanging from his collar. He didn't see Silas at first, walked straight through the front toward the back office. Silas stepped into his path. Mr. Jennings, Kurt blinked. Didn't know you're not on payroll anymore, Kurt laughed. Okay, look, if this is about the drawer thing, I already talked to corporate. No, you didn't, Silas cut in. You talked to no one above store level. And I'm not giving you a chance to spin this. Kurt glanced around and lowered his voice. If someone's been feeding you stories, I was here, Silas said. I watched you blame an employee for a mistake you made. I saw you dismiss protocol, ignore temperature logs, and intimidate staff into silence. Kurt's tone shifted. I've worked here 6 years. You really gonna toss that out based on a few misunderstandings? Silas didn't blink. Yes. Kurt's posture changed, shoulders tightening, jaw clenching. But he didn't argue. He looked behind Silas and saw Zaria watching from a distance. I see how it is, he said under his breath. Silas didn't respond. You'll regret this. No, Silas said. I regret not seeing it sooner. By 3, Kurt was gone, his keycard deactivated. His name scrubbed from the schedule. The atmosphere shifted again, not instantly, but noticeably. Conversations grew lighter. People started asking questions they'd been afraid to voice before. How long are you staying? Will the other stores be changing too? What happens if we speak up now? Silas answered them all, straightforward, no promises he couldn't keep. I'm staying until this store stabilizes, then I'll visit the next, and the next. He didn't sugarcoat it. They were still understaffed, still tired, still behind, but now they had a voice, and someone was finally listening. The next morning began without ceremony. No announcement, no balloons, no sudden flood of new faces. Just the quiet hum of cooler fans and the soft thump of delivery crates against the rear dock. Silas arrived early again, but this time he didn't step in as Stan. He walked through the front door like he owned the place because he did and nodded to the few employees already setting up. Zaria was by the front end organizing the register drawers. She didn't look up until he was a few feet away. "There's a delivery truck sitting out back. Says no one came to sign off yet." "I'll take care of it," she said, already moving toward the stockroom. Silas stopped her gently with a look. "You don't need to do it all." She hesitated, then gave a small nod and redirected Theo, who just clocked in. Silas checked his phone. The internal audit team was en route. 3 members from corporate compliance, all briefed and instructed to stay low profile. No clipboards, no suits. Just observation from the floor. He had asked them to review not just the paperwork, but the people. By 8, the store was at functional capacity. No one was ahead, but no one was drowning either. Silas had called in 2 part-time floaters from other locations to lighten the load, one for produce and one for the backroom. Both were reliable and quiet, which was exactly what the store needed. Silent reinforcement, not more noise. He stood by the coffee aisle with Marcy, who was restocking filters and paper cups. "Did you get your shift straightened out?" he asked. Zaria fixed it last night. She had copies of the old schedules. "Turns out I wasn't the only one whose time got changed after the fact. Anyone else still waiting on corrections?" 2 others, but they're off today. She said she'd handle theirs too. Silas nodded. "If she needs help, she has mine." "She doesn't ask for it," Marcy said. "But she needs it." He made a note. "Not mental real." He carried a small leather-bound notebook now, no logos, no branding, just a place to write things that mattered. Corporate systems had failed this store, but paper hadn't. By 10, the compliance team had quietly flagged 3 key issues. First, inventory logs were still incomplete. Second, the freezer unit near the bakery showed signs of prior malfunction, evidence of icing and inconsistent temperatures. Third, and most concerning, an empty medication lockbox in the employee breakroom with no log on who had access to it. That one made Silas pause. He called Zaria to his office, a small converted space in the back corner that had only a desk, 2 chairs, and a file cabinet. "Have you seen this before?" he asked, pointing to a photo one of the auditors had taken. She leaned over the desk. "Yes." "That used to be locked. Kurt had the only key, far as I know, said it was for first aid and OTC pain meds." "Do you know who requested to keep it stocked?" "No idea. It's been empty for weeks." "Did anyone ever get hurt on the job and use it?" "Cuts, bruises." Theo sliced his palm on a broken bottle once, but people mostly brought their own stuff. Silas nodded once, then closed the file. "If you remember anything else, anything at all, tell me directly." She looked like she wanted to ask more, but didn't. By noon, Silas met with the district HR officer on site, someone he'd personally requested to be reassigned and embedded here for the next 60 days. Not to police, but to listen. "I want every employee given a one-on-one within the next 10 days, he said. "Privately. No time limits. Pay them for the hour, even if it only takes 15 minutes. "That's going to cost you," the officer replied. "It's already cost me more." While the HR rep began scheduling the sessions, Silas walked the aisles again. He wasn't checking for dust or crooked labels. He was watching movement, flow. When people got jammed up, when they hesitated, when they looked over their shoulder before taking action. He stopped near the dairy cooler when he saw something that made him pause. A teenage employee, he remembered his name as Lewis, stood frozen, holding a gallon of milk, staring at the shelf like it might attack him. The kid looked anxious, shifting his weight, glancing toward the ceiling. Silas approached slowly. "Everything all right?" Lewis flinched. "Yes." I think I messed up the rotation. I don't know if I put the older stock in front." "Let's fix it together." They bent down and checked expiration dates. Lewis had been right, he'd put the newest milk at the front. No big deal, Silas said. You caught it. That's what matters. Lewis looked relieved. Kurt used to threaten write-ups for that. I'm not Kurt, I know, it's just hard to unlearn. Silas stood and clapped him lightly on the shoulder. You'll get there. As the day stretched into afternoon, a calm began to settle over the store. Not peace, there were still long lines, still late orders, still uneven shifts, but the undercurrent of fear had started to lift. People made eye contact again. Conversations weren't whispered. At 4, Silas gathered the core staff in the back for a quick check-in. Not a speech, just a pulse. I know this hasn't been easy, he said. I won't pretend a few days fixes everything. Zaria stood near the door, arms crossed, not defensive, just tired. But this store will become the model for the rest, not because it's perfect, but because it showed the flaws early. You all survived what others didn't see, Theo asked. What happens when you leave? I won't leave until the systems are stronger than the people in charge of them, until no one person can break what you've built. A silence followed, not awkward, just full. Tasha, who had barely spoken in any meeting, raised her hand halfway, then lowered it and spoke plainly. Are we allowed to ask for help now, without getting punished? Yes, you always were. Now you'll be heard. After the group dispersed, Zaria lingered. There's something I didn't say before, she began. About the drawer, the one Kurt blamed me for. You don't have to explain. I know, but I want to. Silas waited. He used to pull me aside, say little things, about how I owed the store for being late once last winter. How I should make up for mistakes by staying after. That drawer thing, it wasn't about money, it was about control. Silas didn't interrupt. I stayed because I didn't want to leave my team behind. But I also stayed because I didn't think anyone would believe me. You don't need to carry that anymore. She nodded once, not as thanks, but as release. That night, Silas locked up the store himself. Lights dimmed, alarms set, keys in his pocket. Outside, the parking lot sat empty except for a single car, Zaria's again. He watched as she climbed in and didn't immediately drive off. She just sat there, engine off, hands on the wheel. He didn't approach. Some moments belonged to the people who survived them. The following week, Silas returned to the corporate office. He had a new policy manual drafted, one that required all managers to undergo a third-party ethics review. Every 6 months, anonymous feedback weighted more heavily than performance metrics. He funded a rotating field ombudsman role, someone who would visit stores unannounced, embedded like he had been, and he wrote a personal letter to every employee at Store 7, not an email, a letter, signed by hand. It ended with one sentence: silence ends when someone decides to listen. He had listened. Now the company would too.